We are 10, 10, 10. It's the old Sean Spears, if anyone knows what that is. Weeks away from Sundays away from the NFL season kicking off, being done with these best ball drafts, but we're not done now. And I've brought a friend of mine to help me go over some info on zero RB as well as draft over on drafters. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. Good morning, Tom.
Good afternoon, Rob.
I know it's so much later where you are, where I'm hoping to be at some point next year.
Fantastic.
We are going to try to get over to York and Scotland, but that's next year. Let's talk about this year, and let's talk about the article or the charts that you just released this morning. I literally woke up to them. I think it was the first thing I saw.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, like, this is how sad our life can become as like fantasy football nerds. That after Friday, Hayden retweeted something of mine where I'd put how popular Zero RB had been and how much it's grown in recent years. Ever since I'd been kind of it'd been ruminating with me the fact that people are still missing the point with Zero RB a little bit, that it's not just about I need to take 5 wide receivers in a row. Like, and obviously Eric talked about this with Sean Siegel and Colm, and it was fantastic, that conversation. You know, Ben Gretsch has talked about this loads. Pete talks about this loads. You guys talk about this loads. But there is still a lot of people, and it's the people who are on the fringe, I think, who last year were building Zero RB for the first time, but weren't doing it to its optimum strategy. And I just try to kind of put into some tweets some of the thoughts about, like, you know, if you're going Zero RB, you should be heavily considering elite quarterback, elite tight end, and really looking to build that monster team that is strong at every position and not just running wide receiver.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think to build upon what you just said there, I think what a lot of people do, and stop me if you heard this before, but I have a small, like not a great poker background, but I have a small poker background. And I think one of the biggest mistakes people used to make in poker is there's a ton of different strategies to learn in poker, and learning them doesn't mean you have to use them, right? But getting a fundamental understanding of every different type of strategy that's out there and why people are doing what are doing can make you a better best ball player, can make you a better poker player, can make you a better anything. Not implementing it is one thing, but understanding the basic value of why its positives and negatives, because every basic strategy, there are positives within zero RB, whether you like it or not. There are negatives within zero RB, whether you like it or not. Your slates are going to be different, but just having a fundamental understanding of why each specific strategy makes sense. Like, I can make a case why elite quarterback is great. I can make a case why elite quarterback's not great.
Yeah.
Right. So like it's understanding those and the meshing of those strategies together, why you should be doing it, why you should be looking out for doing it, why your opponents are doing it, how to counteract when your opponents are doing it. And I think that is what's missed sometimes. Everyone takes it as what they have to do rather than just getting an overall understanding of the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think last year so many people fell into Zero RB because the draft board just forced a lot of people into it. And, you know, last year would have been the year to prioritize robust RB or dual RB builds to a bigger extent than previously, not to a massive extent, because we know obviously Saquon failed in the playoffs. But just looking at the draft board and saying, how can we melt it to our advantage? How can we take the strategy that people are high on and then supercharge it or build it to an extreme? And, like, you know, where that's like taking a hero RB approach of grabbing that legendary running back in the first round, but then going into like a zero RB extreme build where then you're not going to touch another RB till what, like round 8, round 9, round 10, but locking in the other priorities like elite quarterback and elite tight end, or building fragile in other areas. Like, there just still seems to be a mindset, no matter how much we put content out or how much these great conversations happen elsewhere, where there will be people who just see the headline and go, oh, this is a zero RB build, or this is a hero RB build, and then ignore some of the principles behind those.
Yeah, and understanding that the definitions of those are going to fluctuate year to year based on the draft board too,
Yeah.
is what I think. I think you can't lock yourself into this is where the 0 RB range starts or ends. Like, obviously, it's never going to start in the first round, but there is a fluctuation point between drafts versus where it was when that article was first written. And we have
Yeah.
to be fluid with that as well. So as the game changes, you have to change as well. And I think that's the other thing.
Yeah. And like last year, like the dead zone was probably more alive than in many of years before it, and definitely there was a lot of people who had more confidence in it. But this year it feels like it's kind of falling back to where it was a couple of years ago, like when Jack Miller wrote his update to Ben Gretsch's original content about the dead zone. So just understanding the pockets and saying, right, it's not strictly, and I know a lot of the chart I put out and a lot of the thread is about the strict kind of definitions of it. But if you can say, well, this year, because of where wide receiver falls off, or because of where quarterback falls off and stuff, this is the pocket and this is how I'm viewing this strategy, then it just opens up so many more doors for potentially being right.
Agreed. We can continue this conversation, but we are going to go ahead and register into the Drafters Championship, where the promo that they're running is almost over. You have 2 more days to do these drafts. I'm going to hit my 50. I think this will be my 49th draft on Drafters, so I can get my extra 2 free tickets. And if you haven't signed up for Drafters yet, me and Eric discovered this yesterday. If you use promo code SPIKE, you will get up to $100 match. So that's 5 free entries into the tournament. And then because you'll hit 10, you'll get an extra 2. So you only have to pay for 5 entries and you get 7 for free, which
Love it.
is a wild, wild deal. And I'm sad that I can't fully capitalize on that deal. But if you haven't signed up for Drafters, I would sign up now and get your 10 entries so you get your extra 2 free and get 7 free entries. Tom, have you been hitting the Drafters lobbies, doing some of the cumulative stuff?
So I maxed for $2. That was one where I wanted to kind of like figure out my takes for the year and stuff like that, and kind of work through
Mhm.
what I wanted to build and how I wanted to build it. And it seemed like a good idea at the time to throw 150 entries into there. I kind of came to regret that when I was doing 150 slow drafts at once. And then sadly and unfortunately for me, drafters pulled out of UK coverage. So
Oh,
currently
no.
just finished all my slows, and that'll be it for me on drafters, apart from on shows like yourself. And of course, with Tyler on Fantasy Sanctuary, we'll be doing some drafters content as we go. The worst part about it was on the day they told me they were pulling out of the UK, I had literally spent the morning recording an entire video about how to approach drafters. So,
Man,
swings and right.
that stuff's getting wild. They have the California situation happening right
Yeah.
now, which is, I think, a whole different can of worms.
Yeah.
It's so annoying, to be honest.
It's just frustrating as well when there are so many forms of gambling which just seem to sail through and be okay. Like nobody is ever coming down hard on Powerball, for instance, like,
Right.
which is such a massive waste of money. And just like I've lost count of the amount of people I know that only play these things when the jackpot hits stupid levels. So over here we have the Euro Millions, and it'll get to like 150 million pounds, and all of a sudden everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I've got to play that this week." What, you weren't interested when it was 20 million pounds? But people start throwing loads at it. Like that stuff's garbage. Like your odds of winning that far less interesting to me than a game of luck and skill like
No,
this.
it's open corruption, right? Like we
Yeah.
know what it is. We know it's open corruption.
Oh yeah.
This started with poker back on Black Friday, back in 2011. Very sad day for me. I was I don't know if I probably mentioned this before. I was slated to do a reality show that I had won a seat onto with like Antonio Esfandiari, um, Andrew Roble, Brian Rast, Sarah Underwood, and then Black Friday happened and all of that got canceled. So sad days. And then it's carried over to DFS where casinos are lobbying, you have your government, you get weird state rules.
Yeah.
Massachusetts, where I live, has a really weird one. We're only allowed to deposit $1,000 onto a month onto a thing. If not, if we want to do more, we have to like fill out paperwork.
Man.
Yeah,
Like, see,
it's so stupid.
and the thing is, over here in the UK, like generally speaking, like gambling's just been a huge part of culture for decades. Like, every Premier League team pretty much has a gambling sponsor on the shirt. Around the edge of the pitches, you'll see gambling sponsors nonstop, and it's just not even remote. It's not frowned upon at all, really,
Right.
to the point where gambling winnings over here, you don't pay taxes on them. It's all tax free. It's just, those are your winnings. The bookies, they pay tax on their earnings and stuff. But so I don't know, like I find it quite frustrating and difficult. But hey, maybe if California gets ruled out, then maybe some of these companies will be forced to go, hey, there's a big old market across the pond to like an NFL.
Yeah, and I hope you guys get it because that means bigger tournaments, bigger prize pools, all the fun stuff as well. We got the 11th spot here, Tom, which I don't know about you, but this year I love drafting out the back end of the board more so than the front end.
Yeah, like I'm happy with the first three picks, and then I really like the last three picks as well. I think that in between area, it just becomes quite flat. Like altogether, I think it's a really strong round one this year. I
Yeah.
don't have a problem with anybody. There's nobody I'd really want to be completely out on the first round ADP, but then at the back end, it just feels like you're getting two first round talents every single time.
Yeah, you can get some really fun combinations at the back end. This is a friends and family draft. It looks like Ralph is in here. We got River Rat. We got Lego. We got Moxie, who is probably yelling at himself in Discord because he can't figure out YouTube chat, which is fun. So good times all around. But yeah, I'm very happy to draft at the back end of the draft and get some unique combinations before we start talking about anything else. My draft hacker, I just want to go over what our percentages are showing. The first one is my ownership for that player in this specific tournament. The next one is my percentage of that player with my first quarterback drafted. The next one is my first rounder with that player. Then my second rounder with that player. And then my two favorite, the last two is that player's projection with the first round selection I make and then the second round selection I make.
Nice.
So that helps me get a ton of combinations that you just don't see, because people, especially where we're drafting,
Yeah.
people are very concentrated on the players they want to take in the front end of the board and the back end of the board.
Yeah, it always seems to get that way, particularly these like the round one, round two turns. And if you're not making those kind of decisions, it gets so easy to just end up with the same team again and again and again. And obviously the draft you did with myself and Tyler a couple of weeks ago, where we pulled Nico all the way up to the front end of the board, that ended up being really fun. But I agree that it's just as easy on the back end.
We are going to be coming up on the clock. We have CMC, we have Nico, we have Amon Ra, Brian Thomas. Any favorites here?
I'm quite relaxed on this one. I think the CMC is probably only going to get more expensive, but yeah, the combo's out there already. Let's go Nico though. Like I know we drafted Nico last week, or Monday even, but I find it hard not to want Nico.
Yeah, you don't have to twist my arm on it. And then if you sort of look, this number that's lit up now, you can kind of see how often Nico is drafting people. And go ahead.
What about Nico and Devon Achan? No, that's sort of sitting at 6%, but I'd be quite happy to take Achan. I feel like he's somebody I've not drafted enough of, maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm totally fine with taking Achan.
But just like, last year he got such a good amount of like his target share was around 15%, which led all running backs. Like he got a really high percentage of Miami's goal line work, and now without Wilson or Mostert, it just feels like if we're talking ceiling outcomes, then he's probably one of those guys who has as high a ceiling as anyone.
Yeah, and I know people are going to be like, "Why didn't you just take CMC there?" And I've drafted through 50 teams, 49 teams, 0 CMC teams. So at this point, for me, it's like one team with CMC. What am I doing? What am I doing with my portfolio at that point?
Yeah.
So I'm more than happy to take Achan instead.
Like, I don't dislike CMC at his price, but I kind of struggle with this idea of just because he's over his Achilles, that he's going to be back to what he was and that he's going to be fantastic. I think it's easy to see a timeline where he just ends up continuing to get hurt, and it's a different injury. Like the Achilles could not matter whatsoever.
Yeah, my take on CMC is pretty simple. If you're in on him, you should be at 20% or more ownership. And if you're out on him, you should be at 0%. I don't think he's a guy you should be getting your classic 8% of at all. He's either very overpriced or very underpriced. So that's the decision I think people have to make. And whichever way someone wants to go with that, Godspeed to him. I see no problem either way, but I don't think you want a middle CMC is what I'm saying.
Are you taking much Garendo?
I'm starting to take more Garendo, and I've been grabbing a very little bit of Jordan James lately.
Okay, fun.
I've been leveraging it more through the passing game, is what I
Yeah,
would say.
that's kind of where I've landed as well. I like Jennings, I like Pearsall. Kittle. Obviously, there's plenty of us in the best ball community hyped about George Kittle this year. It feels like it's quite easy to project him without Deebo Samuel to just scoop up even more of those close to the line of scrimmage stuff. So
Yeah.
worry slightly about the offensive line. We saw Trent Williams missing time last year, his lowest PFF grade in like the last 6 years. If you're not getting quality play from the tackles and so much of what the Niners do can be runs to the outside, then there's just part of me that just thinks that the Niners could be worse than people are expecting this year.
Yeah, I don't expect them to be a top 5 offense, but I think that they're gonna be fine. I guess I'm a little more down on them than others, but, like, my down is, like, just that they're fine. Like, I think that that's where I sort of land with them. We are about to be back on the clock here, and we are gonna have an interesting decision to make. I'm not
Uh,
a huge Josh Jacobs guy, but this is one of those cases where it's like
yeah,
he's projected 1% with Nico. We
that's
get a
quite a
huge
fall though.
fall.
Yeah, I think we probably have to do it.
I think so too.
But then
Um,
we can build something pretty fun now that we've gone double running back early in the first 3 rounds.
yeah. And not only was he 1% with Nico, he's 4% with Achan. And I just think that, like, as much as Josh Jacobs isn't a standard drafter, like draft selection of mine, I'm not completely out on him. But the
Yeah.
way I want to draft him is this way, where I'm just getting completely unique teams with him. So
Yeah. Obviously, the Packers were so run heavy last year, and perhaps that's part because of the injuries and stuff and the drops, but maybe it continues. I assume we're not going running back here.
I'm not gonna say no if you want to go Brees Hall and just go on inverse team from what we usually build.
I mean, just screw it, man. Yeah, like Brees Hall, and we could just maybe cap this thing at 4 running backs altogether and see how that feels. But like, we were talking about pushing structures. Let's see how long we can maybe wait before taking another running back here.
Yeah, I'm totally cool with that. I think that 4 is fine. I think because we have the 20 rounds, if we want to take an absolute late round flyer and just shoot for upside, when you do, I think this is so, since we're talking about structures overall, I think one of the mistakes that are made with a team like Achan, Jacobs, and Brees Hall is people will draft middling running backs with them
Yeah,
later. And I think once you've built this foundation, you're just trying to shoot for the moon with whoever you draft after that. Like, I love Tony Pollard, like, for like a lot of the builds that I do. I would never draft Tony Pollard on this team, like ever.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the kind of guys. It's those 20th round dart throws, like the Taj, Keaton Mitchells, those kind of guys who can give you lightning in a bottle potentially, but also if the one of a player, it's going okay. It's the likes of Tyler Algier or someone who, if something happened to Bijan Robinson, all of a sudden now we've got 4 top 24 running backs every single week, and ideally 3
Yeah.
of those to be in the top 12.
Yeah. So I think that's the way that I'm looking at these builds. I don't do them often, but when I do them, I need to be very specific about how I'm building them.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like a room that was too quick. Whereas last year, the opportunity cost of leaning into this stuff was quite difficult at times because, as Pete talked about, like the wide receiver avalanches could be very difficult to recover from. But here, outside of the team in the 12 spot who's gone 4 wide receivers, there's a bunch of teams who've got only 2 wide receivers through 4 rounds, which makes it a little bit easier on us.
I actually think that helps us too, being in the 11 spot, and he's already gone 4. He's
Yeah,
going to have to veer off course where we're going to have to double tap at points, and we're going to get both guys that we want, basically.
yeah, definitely.
So this is fun. I like doing these. Like I like doing different teams on stream just to make us sweat a little bit. Get us
Yeah.
outside the comfort zone.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's like, when you draft on your own, we can draft that ideally how we like to, and you can look for those really great super teams. But when you're drafting with somebody else and you're talking about it, and you've got awesome people in the chat like we do today, then it's interesting to have those hypotheticals and talk through them and really see how it'll end up.
Yep. We're going to be on the clock here in a second, and I think we're in a great spot. It's coming up.
Like, so Jalen Waddle would be the pick for me.
Yeah.
Be very comfortable with that.
Yeah, I love Waddle here. We got A-Chan already as well. I think that's great. And then we're going to see what Tycoon does here with a double tap. And I'm going to be probably very comfortable with one of the selections at minimum that's going to be left. So
Unless he goes double wide receiver, which he doesn't, which
yeah.
would have maybe made life slightly more uncomfortable for us. But yeah, so Godwin or Travis Hunter or Chris Olave all feel like pretty reasonable selections. I know you've got 0% Travis Hunter, is that?
Yeah, I'd be more Godwin or Olave here.
Yeah, no, I'd go Godwin. That's kind of my lean there. I'm not taking much Olave because I don't have much faith in the Saints this year. Is Travis Hunter, are you aiming to finish draft season completely at 0, or like do you think you'll end up taking more if we get more kind of coach speak over the summer of him running more wide receiver starts?
It depends where he falls. I think he's starting to fall into a range that I'll be more comfortable taking some stabs at him. Where he was going before, like when you start looking at two-way players, right? And as somebody with like very little experience, I played DB in high school, so I never played on a college or professional level, obviously. But what I can tell you from listening to professionals speak, if you're playing both ways, guess which rooms you have to be in when you're doing your week to week activities. You have to be with the defense because everything is schematic. Yes, you want your timing with your quarterback, but defense is so scheme heavy now that you
Yeah,
have to know where you're supposed to be on the field. Because if you blow your spot as a DB, it's a touchdown. Like it absolutely alters the game. If you blow your spot as a wide receiver, your quarterback looks off and goes to his next read, right? So I think if Travis Hunter is actually going to play DB, I think he's going to play more DB than he is wide receiver. Doesn't mean that he can't have some big games as wide receiver. Specifically on drafters, it makes me even more scared to draft him.
yeah. I think drafters isn't a platform where I'd be aggressive on him. Like I've been drafting Travis Hunter, but it's typically in rooms where he's my wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4, if I can get him at that point. Like if we'd started true zero RB here and ended up with a choice of him or Godwin for our fifth, fourth wide receiver, then I'd be very comfortable with that. But like in this build, Godwin, somebody who can see elite levels of volume and tied at a ridiculous rate last year, made a little more sense.
Got a question from Rel, Fantasy Football Talk. How much does drafting from a good offense matter?
So I think it definitely can matter for different players. And so, like, obviously, good offenses, drafting the wide receiver 3 on a good offense feels so much of a better bet than drafting a wide receiver 3 on a bad team. And then equally, like, whether you want to talk about the running back position, you've got potential for guys to just see garbage time. And obviously, they're the kind of guys that we would be pushing late anyway. You wouldn't want to take guys like that early. But equally, the flip side of this, and this is kind of sitting on the fence a little bit, I appreciate that, is that if you can find a team that is going to go so throw heavy like the Bucks a couple of years ago because their defense is so bad, and then you're going to see 35, 40 pass attempts per game from the quarterback, then that can be an excellent recipe for fantasy. So I'm not sure. I don't think it can be very black and white. I don't know. How about you, Rob?
So for me, I think it is just an additional lever, right?
Yeah.
Like I think you just pulled that lever earlier where you were looking at Godwin and Olave, right? And I like both of those players. I want both of those players. Jaden Reed, right? Like it's absolute smash.
Absolutely. Like this is getting too easy.
Yeah. Just give us Jaden Reed. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
But I think it's a lever. And I think that like if you're close on two players and you don't know which one you want, and especially when you're doing a specific build or something, you can use that as a lever. I think Godwin and Olave for me are pretty much close. If I want to lean one way, it's Godwin because I like the offense a little bit better.
Yeah, I like the offense. I like the quarterback situation drastically better in Tampa.
Right.
Yeah, and I think in this total points format, I just feel a little more comfortable with Godwin than Olave, even at this ADP. I was hoping Mooney might have made it round to us, but didn't. I'd be okay taking TJ Hawkinson here or Baker Mayfield for the stack, but I don't know if you've got anyone further down you'd want to pull up here, Rob.
The only other play I would be Ibuka. So tell me which one you like the best, and we'll take him.
Let's go Ibuka then, yeah, and then just really, then we're at 5 wide receivers through round 8, which feels like quite the recovery.
Yeah, and it gives us 2 Tampa wide receivers. We're not going to get Baker for stack purposes. He's just gonna whoever has Mike Evans is probably going to snag him at some point here, which is fine. I've been trying to get more Ibuka, just thinking through that Bucks offense as a whole. We like the Bucks offense in general, right? Whether you like it through the run game, whether you like it through the pass game, it's great. I like Godwin a lot. I like Ibuka as a first round pick. And the only guy I'm out on really is the one guy that I've actually been pounding my chest for years. And I was a big Mike Evans guy for the past few years when others weren't. But I think it's time to let him go, man. I think that I keep describing it as the Make-A-Wish moment from last year where they just kept throwing him the ball just to get him the 1,000 yards. And I think all the signs are indicating that they're starting to be ready to move on from Mike Evans.
Yeah. I mean, between McMillan and Ibuka, it feels like they're really well stocked for the future. But like for this year, I mean, they're paying Godwin and Evans a combined like $58 million, and there's no way out of those contracts. And why would they want to get out of them? But I've got more faith that Ibuka is out there on 3 wide receiver sets than McMillan, even though McMillan was good last year, kind of quite reliant on the touchdowns that he got for fantasy purpose, which isn't a bad thing. Getting touchdowns in your rookie season is not something to be sniffed at, but like Ibuka just has such a high floor, and I don't think that Godwin and Ibuka aren't going to be able to operate on the field at the same time together.
Yeah, as Versaire says, new quote he saw from Baker said that Ibuka can slot in anywhere.
Yeah.
So that seems good. The one thing that I keep hearing, drafters and content creators go back to alike on Olave is that he's one concussion away from retiring, and we can't predict concussions, man. Like we just can't.
Well,
And I
yeah,
understand the thesis of that. Like we don't love it, but that's why he's a 6th-round pick and not a
yeah.
2nd-round pick, right? Like it's priced in at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, people did this with Tua. People would try to retire Tua when he was, down on the field and all dealing with that. But ultimately, if these players are out there and if these players are saying we're going to play them, we should be willing to draft them if the rest of the recipe makes sense. Now, if Derek Carr was there, I'd have a bit more faith in Chris Olave. I'd
Right.
have a lot more faith in Rashid Shaheed if Derek Carr was there. But I don't know, man. Like the Saints' offensive line wasn't particularly great last year. I know there's some optimism around New Orleans that they fixed a few of the problems, but I don't know. I mean, Kellen Moore teams, they play fast, and that would probably be the argument that should get me on board the most. That if they are going to have a high play volume, then there's potential for a lot of passes to be made, whether they're accurate or not. That could be good for fantasy.
Trey Harris goes, which is sad. I was hoping maybe we get him. We are on the clock here. Is anyone jumping out to you?
Not massively. I'd be okay with Mark Andrews. I'd be okay with Rashad Bateman, just as but just it's Ravens players, so we've got to draft at least one of them when I'm on stream. But I don't know if you have a lean between them massively.
Let's grab Bateman.
Yep.
Because I feel like I'm still okay with taking Andrews if that's something we wanted to do here, but I think there are multiple tight ends I'd be fine taking in the next round, and I don't want Shaheed on this team.
Yep.
And there's really a fall off at wide receiver at this point.
Would you be open to, I appreciate Mike Curses here, but Jonnu Smith and just building out that Dolphins one a little bit more, or do you feel like that's a little too much in this format?
I'd be fine with it, honestly. He's not a favorite click of mine. He's just he's a there guy. I haven't really taken him much here. I've been on other sites, but
I just kind of feel like the Dolphins defense is going to be so incredibly bad that I'm trying to put aside my issues with how the offense looked last year and those kind of bits and just say, look, this is a team that, well, Tua ranked top 3 in pass attempts per game when he was healthy last year.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to lose Jalen Ramsey at some point, you imagine, and then they're down to Storm Duck being their top cornerback, which I can't tell you much about Storm Duck, to be honest, Rob.
Greatest name ever.
Yeah.
That's all we can tell you is that it's an amazing name. The only other guy I would have pounded the table for there is Njoku. So
I kind of struggle with Njoku, and that's probably one of those players. You have those players where you hit a point where you look at your exposures, and obviously, when I'm doing that, I'm looking on Draft IQ because it's the best tool in the business. And I go, whoa! I thought I was drafting a little more Njoku than I am, and there's definitely part of me that's worried about the QB situation and how the Browns look in general. For some reason, I just always seem to end up on other players, and perhaps it's because I'm prioritizing stacks with tight ends in general and looking and going, I would rather stack a tight end so I could just deal with the quarterback and the tight end at the same time. And I never draft a Browns quarterback. Maybe that's what's leading me to be lower on him.
Yeah, I think it's that. So I think it's that. I think this range of tight ends is a little tough to click on.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you're usually looking for other positions here as well. Especially we deemed it the red wedding last night. This is where just the quarterbacks start to fly off the board. And you kind of don't want to get stuck behind that. And if you are going 0 RB, you're usually trying to desperately grab one of these running backs as well. So
I kind of, like this range in the draft feels like potentially the most important this year because it's like obviously the wide receivers dry up once you get past Michael Pittman. The running backs are so ambiguous in this range, and then there's such a glut of quarterback and tight end, but it feels like if a quarterback emerges from this range, someone like a Drake May, or if Kyler Murray even becomes like what we've seen him flash at points, and then if you get somebody like Jonnu Smith, David Njoku, who just continues to be excellent in a way that we're maybe a bit skeptical, including myself, of, then it feels like if you've double tapped the two, like the guy at quarterback and the guy at tight end, who turn into those top 5, top 6 options, then that could be where a lot of rosters end up elevating.
Yeah. We do have a question in chat here from For Best Ball asking, can you explain stacking without a quarterback? Since you were playing against 140,000 other drafters, aren't you a dog to every Godwin, Ibuka, Mayfield team that's out there?
I mean, so Karain kind of talked about this a little bit last year, where it was his article, or where it was like, "Go ahead, snipe me, I dare you," kind of thing. Where it's like, okay, yes, we are a bit of a dog to the teams that have Mayfield, but that just gives us an opportunity to have those players and say, okay, well, if Mayfield goes off and all those guys have those players, but what if we also have a stack which also does that from another one, which those teams don't? And so again, something you preach, Rob, like the kind of combinatorial range of things, and saying, okay, well, maybe we end up with a big Tua stack along with those players, and that's something which is massively underowned.
Yeah, and I think that that's one way to look at it. I think the other way to look at it is you can do it. I like to really do it with like the elite quarterbacks, because would you rather have Godwin, Ibuka, and Baker, or Godwin, Ibuka, and Josh Allen, right? So
Yeah.
we are on the clock. We can continue this discussion in a second. Do you have any? Do you like
I'd be
Jordan Love?
okay. Yeah, I'd be okay with Jordan Love. Yeah, I mean, obviously we've got Josh Jacobs, we've got Jaden Reed, so we're hitting on a bit of a ground game and a bit of a passing game, but I don't see any reason to fade that.
All right, I completely agree. And I'm going to be honest, if we want to, I think we have to do it now. Just based on this room, I don't think we're going to be able to push them.
Yeah, I'd be okay with it. I mean, we'll get that done. I think we've scooped decent value elsewhere that we can afford to make that reach.
And
yeah,
yeah, I think with our build, I mean, I don't need another quarterback here. I mean,
no,
Love
definitely
and
not.
Tua is fine for me.
Yeah,
I think that's perfectly acceptable. Our running back room is strong. I think we actually got a phenomenal wide receiver room for the way we
so
drafted
good.
this team. I think this is a fun team right now.
I was expecting like Michael Pittman as like wide receiver 3 at one point, wide receiver 4, and not any knock on Michael Pittman, but to come out of this with Nico Collins as well as like Godwin, Jalen Waddle, like, and Jaden Reed, like those 4 are really good options.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun team. And just to finish up the point on the stacking, yes, I prefer it. I would prefer to have Baker on this team with Ibuka and Godwin. But when you don't get that, you can look at it like, okay, we have a Tampa stack, but now we also have a Green Bay stack. We also have a Miami Dolphins stack, right? So we're getting the benefits of all 3 of those teams. So as long as Love and Tua perform at a level close to Baker throughout the season or a little bit better, we're getting all of the points plus some, and it gives us a little bit of uniqueness, is how I would justify it. Again, preference would be Baker, but I don't think it's a necessity.
Yeah, I'm completely with understand that. So obviously we've gone pretty heavy at wide receiver since. Like, how much further do you think we push it before we go to our next running back?
I think we could grab one in our next range of picks, but I would only grab one there, and then my last one would be like a 19th or 20th round guy if I were to do 5.
Yeah, it makes sense. And if we're sticking at 2 QB, then opening that up to 5 definitely isn't something I'd be against.
Yeah, so like just as I go through this, as we're drafting this team, my brain just starts to go to numbers, and it's like, okay, I think this is fine as a 2 QB build. I'm probably doing 5 running backs, 3 tight ends, and then just hammering wide receiver. the rest of the way is the way that I would be looking at it personally.
Yeah.
And lucky for you, we do not have to draft Trey Benson. I know you hate him.
I mean, look, Reddit is big mad at me for ignoring Trey Benson, but they'll get over it when I ignore their messages.
You called him. We can grab Algier here.
I'm always down to draft Tyler Algier. I just think that he's the most important backup running back in the league.
So that gives us that out to Algier, who usually I like to draft Algier because I think he has a little bit of standalone value. The contingent upside is massive. I think when you're drafting him for this team, you're just banking on the contingent upside for that, which I think is fine if it's for your build, right? So
yeah, definitely. Like, because it's like, you build some zero RB teams where you're just like, well, Tyler Algier will get me 10 points some weeks, and that's all I need to just carry me through and keep surviving. But yeah, here definitely we just need contingent. Don't hate Romeo Dubs, but I'm not amazingly in love with it. It's a bit of a crappy range, really.
Do you like any of these tight ends?
Well, Kyle Pitts is somebody that if we want to shoot for upside, I think that there probably still is some upside. He had 4.4 targets per game with Michael Penix last year, and last year there were only 6 other tight ends who had more than that across the season on average, and obviously extrapolating a very small sample size. But apparently you can extrapolate 3-game samples as much as you like on Twitter these days and use that for your player takes.
Absolutely. I'm fine with Pitts here. Like we're not the stink is on his name, but
yeah,
the stink is on his name because he was what was he, 5th, 6th round pick last year, somewhere in that wheelhouse. We're getting him in the 14th now.
Well, yeah, and it's like you go back and you kind of look, and what he did in his rookie year was good, but not as much hype as it was warranting. Brock Bowers kind of delivered on the hype that Kyle Pitts had given us, even though Brock Bowers didn't get as much hype because he looked a bit scrawny, stood next to Gronk, and didn't run a 40 time. If Kyle Pitts had done that, then we'd look back on his career completely different. And obviously, he's never really gotten into the end zone at a great rate. Like, was it 1 touchdown year one, and steadily that's grown to like 4 last year. But I think, I can't be high on Darnell Mooney. I can't be high on Drake London, high on the running game, and then not say in a best ball format that Kyle Pitts in round 14 isn't worth the occasional dart throw.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still grabbing him. He's not a guy that I'm like going to bat for. He's another whatever guy. He's in that mix of tight ends. I want to mix him in. I want to be getting a lot of the tight ends in this range to go with some of my builds. So he's just like fine. It's just like you don't have to make an argument for or against every guy. Some guys you do just throw on your teams to throw on your teams.
And I don't think there's a position that's more perfect for that than tight end.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what that position was made for in some cases. It's if you're not first, you're last position of best ball because you are going to have some bad players at that position.
Well, that's it. Like last year, there was so much kind of talk back and forth about elite tight ends and where they were the playoff best ball hammer, and then it ended up being the year of years for like punt tight end as well. So I don't know, man. Everything I tend to think about the tight end position changes so much year to year, and having a bit of exposure to everything across my portfolio feels a little bit better when it comes to tight ends rather than taking some ridiculous stances.
We are next on the clock, waiting to see what ADS 827 does, and I think Josh Palmer is a slam dunk here, but I'm willing to listen.
No, I'm good with Josh Palmer. I like him. I think again that's that kind of thing of just grabbing a player off a good offense, and his bye week's different than a lot of the others, which I'm not too concerned. Like the spread we've got's fine anyway, but just when it comes to the wide receiver position on this team, I'd be a little more just cognizant of it than others. When we come back around, like I don't really want to deal with any of these quarterbacks. I'd be okay taking Mike Gesicki as the third tight end and then just boxing that off unless you want to shoot for more upside with like Mason Taylor.
I don't think we need to shoot. So I think that you could play this either way, and I would be okay with it. A lot of my Mason Taylor builds are when I have a bit of an earlier tight end, and Gesicki goes anyways,
Of course.
which is fine. But I'm fine with Mason Taylor here. I like Chig is fine. I'd be fine with Jarquez Hunter as our last running back. I'd usually push it more,
Yeah.
but if that was something you were interested in.
Well, I'd go Rico or Jarquez if you want to do a running back here.
Let's do Jarquez.
Jarquez, like talk about a nuclear upside.
Yeah, and I think that's all we need is nuclear upside
Yeah.
on this team. Is
Yeah. Like
that
we had before the draft, we were doing some slightly more rookie focused content, like with Rich, who does all our dynasty stuff, and we had a bunch of different people on to do like their 3 favorite prospects. And I think it was Daigle, JJ Zacharyson, and at least one other person were all just heavily on Jarquez Hunter. And sometimes I'm okay to just lean into the fact that really smart people like this guy who the Rams really liked, and that's enough for me.
Yeah, and it's a different bet than Blake Corum last year.
Yeah, Blake Corum, it was just like this man scores nothing but touchdowns.
Yeah, well, so the whole Blake Corum thing puzzled me last year because we saw, and I still like Kyron this year. Don't get me wrong. I'm more so doing this on like this is like injury contingent more so than anything with Hunter. I'm not sure he actually takes the job from Kyron. I think there's a small possibility of that, but the Corum thing, nobody liked him before he got drafted. Nobody liked Blake Corum. I don't know if you remember that. Everyone absolutely thought he was a terrible pick, but because people were looking for reasons to displace Kyron Williams, which is what they've done every year since he's been in the league. They've been looking for reasons not to draft Kyron Williams. And he's just one of those guys that it doesn't matter what your stats are. They're just going to give him the ball and he's just going to get a ton of volume. And it is what it is with the Rams. But Corum got punted up to the 10th round, I think it was last year at some points. He was like the number 1 contingent back, and I never understood the price on it. You're giving me Jarquez Hunter in round 16, 17, 18. I'm willing to make that bet there. With a guy that looks like he has more upside than Blake Corum had. People are actually excited about, and I'm getting a better bet there. So I still draft Kyron here and there, but I love the upside of Jarquez Hunter.
The Corum thing was like kind of always funny to me as well, because there was the classic pinning Corum to the Chargers stuff going, oh, well, you know, of course, Michigan, he's going to end up with the Chargers. And everybody was so sure about it. Everyone banged on and on and on about it. And the Chargers passed him several times over in the draft. But the assumption was, it was never, okay, well, the Chargers, who knew more about Blake Corum than anyone, decided that he wasn't worth various picks. But let's assume that the Rams are just going to take him and displace Kyron Williams, who the year before had been more efficient than he was last year. Let's put it that way anyway. And like I don't mind Kyron Williams. I drafted more Kyron Williams last year because I didn't see the Blake Corum thing than I am this year. I think this year, once you start getting into like 3-headed committees, it becomes so much more muddled, and I'm kind of allowing for Blake Corum to make a little bit of a jump this year at the same time saying that I expect Jarquez Hunter to be out there because he's so electric. And if Kyron starts losing touches in that scenario, I think it'd be harder to recover from. Whereas last year, you know, Corum would mix in for a drive, but that was about it most of the time.
The great thing about the Rams is they tell you the players they like because they don't play them in preseason. So
yeah,
something to keep an eye on as well. All right, we are on the clock here.
I was going to say Kate Orton, but maybe that's a bit too Bucks heavy without Baker. Otherwise, like, we feel quite set in a bunch of areas. I don't mind going like Tutu Atwell, somebody I draft quite a lot of. Elik Ayamana as well, I like.
We'll grab Tutu for now, and we'll see what comes back to us.
I mean, the tight end tier, the cliff's kind of approaching, but part of me would like to have reasonable volume, unless you've got somebody up your sleeve, Rob.
I have a player that I like that if we don't get a tight end in this round, I think we're fine in the 19th or 20th round.
Okay.
as well. So it's gonna sort of be a pick your poison. I do think it's wide receiver or tight end here, though, is what I will say.
Yeah.
So
Could you scroll down a little?
yes.
So yeah, I'd go Elikai Amana here. Like by most reports, he seems to be winning the job quite early as wide receiver 2. I'm completely out on Tyler Lockett. I think he just looked really, really dusty last year, and Tyler Lockett always felt like the cliff edge was going to come for him quite quickly. Didn't seem to generate much interest on the free agent market. And whilst I think as a veteran he'll be a really positive influence for Cam Ward, I don't think he'll be anything for fantasy football.
Yeah. Io Manor is a guy that I think it just showed that I had 21% of him right now because I'm clicking the button, man. Clicking the button while I can at these prices because to all the points you made, I won't be shocked if in 2 or 3 weeks we are seeing him rise up the board significantly.
Yep. He's a fun player as well. Like you talk about like adding wide receivers at this point in the draft, you want to make sure you're adding somebody who really is fun. Like I know a lot of people expected him to go earlier than the 4th round, but he landed on a team that had all this potential for him. And I
Right.
think you're talking about somebody who can play all 3 wide receiver spots really. And yes, he might find that he's naturally better as a power slot or maybe just like in that range. But yeah, I've got no concerns about him. I think in general, I quite like the Titans, which perhaps could turn out to be fool's gold. And we do sometimes do this with teams where they're in the rebuild phase where it's like, oh, this team feels like a great value. But I don't think their defense is going to be particularly good. But I think that the offensive line's been built up in a good way. I've got faith in the coaching staff who were well touted coming out of Cincinnati, and since then they've dealt with Will Levis and others. It's not been particularly pretty, but I think that there's not been an awful lot of talent there surrounding the quarterbacks. And now, if you've got Calvin Ridley and if Ayamana could be a reasonable rookie in his first year, then I think that as our wide receiver 9.
Yeah, he's
I'm
our
all,
wide receiver 9.
yeah.
And I think that's an important distinction. It's like when you're doing these types of teams, and a lot of teams, your points for Lockett versus Io Manor, like, does Lockett outscore Io Manor this season? There's a world that happens, but when Io Manor outscores Lockett, it's probably by heaps, right? And that's just
Oh yeah.
our preferences for a
And
guy in the
also
ninth.
And also, like, even if that happens, when does the scoring come? Are we, I know we want to avoid taking zeros over here, but he's our wide receiver 9. So if we were getting the bulk of our amount of scoring later on in the season, like which covering the bye weeks that we've got, then I'm okay making that argument. I think sometimes undrafters and cumulative scoring people get a little caught up in make sure we don't take zeros by ignoring certain rookie profiles, but he's still scoring big at the end of the season, still good.
All right, we are on the clock here, and it's sort of a pick what you want to do here. I like Arroyo. I like Terrence Ferguson, but I really like Harold Fannin here.
Well, let's go Harold Fannin then. And that's probably part of the reason why I'm taking less David and Njoku as well, because Harold Fannin, tight ends who hurdle people, that's something I want to get into.
Yeah, exactly. And you can get him in the 19th and 20th round. He's beautiful for almost all builds that you do with your tight ends, especially one with Jonnu Smith, Kyle Pitts, and Fannin, who can just actually come in and has potential to dominate our tight end room.
Well, do you want to continue that Cleveland stack by adding Deontay Johnson?
No, I refuse.
Right. In that case, let's go AD Mitchell.
Oh yeah.
So I've been mixing in Deontay Johnson in 20 round stuff, just because it seems like he's got the inside track for playing starting wide receiver sets for Browns, and where he plays is just one of those easier areas of the field to win the ball. I don't think that Deontay Johnson is somebody that I want to have high exposure to, but every now and again, there's just situations where I go, do I want just a little more potential volume on this team? And Deontay Johnson, part of me can just see the what if scenario of what if Deontay Johnson just bounces back to be a reasonable, mentally normal person this year.
I am utterly shocked that you're making any case for Deontay Johnson after what he did to the Ravens last year. Did you
Yeah.
read his quote from last week?
Yes. Yeah, it didn't really instill a lot of hope, but I mean, like, this is the Browns. The Browns just I've got faith in Kevin Stefanski to figure out a role for Deontay Johnson if he can get the best out. I think Deontay Johnson's got to realize, but he already cost himself probably what 10, 15 million over
Yeah.
the last year.
Yeah.
And if he wants to continue to make millions of dollars, then this is his last chance to kind of turn it around.
Yeah. One thing I want to point out in the chat, I'm not sure if BKJ, Jesus, what is this name? BKJGJ. He's bringing up a lot of week 17 stuff, which is good to think about in playoff formats. This is drafters. This is cumulative scoring. So week 1 matters just as much as week 17 overall. Tom, we did a 2-5-10-3 build. I'm going to recap the team, and then I want you to tell me what you think. At quarterback, we have Jordan Love and Tua. We have Devon Achane, Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall, Tyler Algier, Jarquez Hunter. We have Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin, Jaden Reed, Emeka Ibuka, Rashad Bateman, Josh Palmer, Tutu Atwell, Io Manor, A.D. Mitchell. And then at tight end, we have Jonnu Smith, Kyle Pitts, and Harold Fannin.
I mean, I like this team. It's fun. Obviously, we've got both quarterbacks stacked with our running backs and wide receivers, which is something that, even though we've seen enough kind of data out there to support that correlation just tends to be good most of the time. You know, good offenses scoring lots of points tend to be good. Perhaps you get those disappointing weeks where the quarterback gets all the points and the running back gets less. But over a season-long format, now we're just betting on the Packers are going to score more points than their ADP is potentially saying, and the Dolphins are going to do the same. And I've got every faith that the Dolphins defense is going to be terrible. I think that we are going to see some interesting weeks from which wide receivers hit our lineup, but being able to get Nico, Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin, Jaden Reed as our top 4 wide receivers when we got the top 3 running backs that we did, I didn't expect that when we had those first 3 running backs clicked.
Yeah, we absolutely lucked out. That was the sweat, was what was our first 4 to 5 wide receivers going to look like. But to compound on everything you said, which is great, is once we went Nico, we took Achane because they were only paired up about 4% of the time. And then Josh Jacob falls to us, who I think was only 1% with Nico Collins, and then still low with, so like just that 3-man combo is so low. And I think that this goes to understanding strategies as well. Once somebody takes Nico, they're not usually going to pound 3 running backs after that, because usually that's just not the type of drafter they are. And it's not the type of drafter I am, to be perfectly frank. But
all me.
But when you do it, I think it's important to do it in a very specific way. And I'm going to be honest, I think this team really highlights that more than most teams that I will draft this year. I actually love this team. It might be one that I share because I think it actually tells the story we wanted it to, and I think we hit absolutely everywhere we wanted to hit on this draft.
Yeah, because it's about, we talked at the start about like bending principles and stuff like that, and about how last year was the year where people really should have been drafting more robust RB than they were doing, because it performed much better, particularly in advance rate and particularly in cumulative scoring. So here it's just kind of saying, okay, well, maybe ADP hasn't adjusted enough, and maybe there is still a world where this is the way that we should be building a little bit more of our teams this year. I'm not going to go overboard on it, but I'll take the teams like this when they fall to us.
Yeah, you gave us Breece Hall in the 4th round. So, like, I mean, sometimes you gotta just jam the alley-oop, right?
So. Yeah, it's too much to like here.
Yeah, I think that's what we did. Well, Tom, it's been a pleasure having you here on the Sunday Sickos stream. can you let everyone know where to find you, where your articles are, where your streams are?
Yeah, so lots of stuff on Fantasy Pros at the minute. Been writing the best ball kit for them this year, which is a lot of fun. A lot of zero RB stuff that I've been tweeting out today comes from kind of stuff that I'd put into the zero RB strategy guide over there. Host the Fantasy Pros Best Ball Show every Monday with Andrew Erickson. That's a lot of fun, drafting on different platforms each week. We live stream on Twitch. The video replays go up on YouTube. And then, of course, myself and Tyler on the Fantasy Sanctuary every Monday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Best Ball Show. Tomorrow we've got Pat Crane on with us, which will be a good time. Obviously, we had yourself, Rob, which was last week. Just, bring the best person in first. And then, otherwise, you just find me on Twitter at NFL_T-Strack, usually tweeting something zero RB related, or over on Reddit, where I'll be upsetting everybody for the players I've left out of my lists.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. If you don't have an answer, it's fine. Tomorrow night, myself and Eric Beimfor are going to be doing a best ball stream. We're going to be doing the best ball basement. We're going to be telling our 5 favorite hip hop albums of all time. I don't need you to give me 5, but do you have 1 or 2 that you want to throw out there for it?
That's not really my genre.
Not your genre. Okay, then give me your top 1 or 2 bands, because I've also released my top 5 bands as well.
I mean, like Pantera were the #1 band who, for years and years I would just listen to. These days I listen to a lot of Killswitch Engage, a lot of Architects, who are probably a little lesser known but more modern. And then look, you just can't go wrong on a nice Sunday like this. I'm going to go downstairs, I'm going to open a Corona and sit in my garden and listen to some Fleetwood Mac.
There you go. Nothing wrong with that list. I'll give you my list. You'll probably hate it. My list that I gave was #1 is Pink Floyd for me. All time. Roger Waters, I went and saw him do The Wall, which is one of my favorite albums ever, which was phenomenal. 2 is Queen. 3 is Pearl Jam. 4 is Blink 182. And
love it.
5 is Fall Out Boy.
Yeah, so, man, we listen to a lot of Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco when the kids are around. We're big fans of both of them. Can't go wrong. Rob, in the words of Kendall from Succession, straight bangers all the time.
Absolutely. And that's going to do it for us. Let us know how you like this team. Let us know what your favorite band is. Let us know what your favorite hip hop album is in the comments. Until next Sunday, I have been Rob. That is Tom. We'll catch you later. Peace. Woo! Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there, you can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.